Hey everyone, welcome to my channel and thank you for clicking on this video. This is the biggest video that I do every year. It's where I go ahead and I rank every single new release that I saw for this year. I go off the USA release schedule, so if a movie came out overseas in 2024 but came out in the US in 2025, I'm including it here on my list. So if you see something you don't agree with being on here, that may be the reason why. I don't know when you're going to be seeing this video. These usually clock in at about like a half hour to an hour, maybe even more, I don't remember exactly, but they're pretty long videos. And if you know anything about watching this channel, me and my editor, we both have full-time jobs. It's just like a little fun side gig we do. So, but when it does come out, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, sit down and enjoy it. I have my Letterboxd pulled up right here, so we have 67 films this year that I have watched. I know that won't be as many as some other big time creators who usually get over 100, but like I said, this for me is just fun. I go to theaters for fun, I watch movies on streaming for fun. I wish it was a full-time career, maybe someday that'll be possible, but for now, it is just what I do on the side. Let's go ahead and get started here. I want to start off by saying these movies are 100% my enjoyment and my liking factor. That's what they're ranked by. I don't go off Letterboxd, I don't go off IMDb, I don't go off Rotten Tomatoes. I give the movie an original score when I first watch it, and then I give the movie another score at the end of the year, both out of 5. I tally those up so they get a final score out of 10, and that's how they get ranked here. So like I said, 67 movies. There is quite a few that I didn't get around to. Like I didn't get to watch both the Predator movies. I wish I did. I've seen Marty Supreme in 2 weeks, so I didn't want to hold off on this video just to watch that one. So you won't see that one here, but this is everything I've watched as of January 1st, New Year's Day. So let's go ahead and get started. Sorry for the long intro. Here we are, and at number 67, we have Black Bag. Now, this is already off to a very controversial start, I feel like, because I'm looking at this movie and it has a pretty high rating. For me, though, it just didn't really work. Never once was I, involved in the plot, involved in the characters. I never really cared what was happening, and I felt like there wasn't even a cohesive story to follow. And maybe that's just me. Maybe I was in a weird mood. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but for me, Black Bag is my bottom movie because everything else on this list, I could at least watch it and get some kind of resemblance of a movie out of. For this film, I couldn't, which sucks because I actually like Steven Soderbergh quite a bit. Number 66, we have Love Hurts. I checked out this movie for the fact that I'm a huge fan of the main actor. I really like that he's getting a resurgence in Hollywood that started off with Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was a great performance by him. And in this movie, he still does give a great performance, but the movie itself is kind of void of anything. It just feels empty. It feels like the script was half-assed, and it's just nothing I would ever go back to again. That's why it's here at the bottom of the list. Up next, a movie I was very excited for, which kind of broke my heart. We have Honey Don't. I'm a big fan of the Coen brothers. I love everything they've done together. Their solo work is a little bit choppy for me. However, I still give all their solo works a try, like this one this year and a couple films they've made in previous years. And like I said, it just doesn't work for me. I heard rumors that they may be coming back together and making a film together in the near future. So I really do hope the Coen brothers can come back around and start making films together, because when they do, it is magical. At 64, a movie that a lot of my friends seem to enjoy, but for me, I'm not a big fan of that TikTok humor. I don't like how this movie was so choppy and a new scene happened every minute and nothing was cohesive. I'm going with Happy Gilmore 2, which sucks because I am a big fan of the original, but the original is just a good, heartfelt story and a good comedy through and through, where this one, like I said, it felt like watching 100 TikToks in a row and then the movie ends. There was really bad jokes, really bad humor, the plot points never really went anywhere, and it turned into some weird fever dream at the end. I'm not a fan of this movie. At 63, a movie that I don't necessarily have any issues with, but I just felt like it didn't do much for me, and that is The Last Supper. I actually do check out a few of these historical biblical films a year. This year this might have been the only one, but I am a fan of them. I do like to see the history of the Bible and what everyone has to say and what people can bring to the big screen. But like I said, for this one, it just felt empty and forgettable. I don't know, I just think that they could have done the whole story of The Last Supper a lot better. At 62, another movie that was very disappointing for me because of this director's track record, and that is Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17. Just right after I watched this movie, I felt disappointed. I felt like I didn't like the way it ended. I didn't like the way it wrapped up. Nothing really felt finished in this film, and now that I'm sitting here talking about it months later, I can barely even describe the plot to you, besides the point that Robert Pattinson plays two different, at some point 3 different versions of himself, and they're all like fighting to be the real Robert Pattinson, and that's really all I got for you. Everything else is so forgettable. Next up at 61, we have Karate Kid Legends. I actually thought this movie was quite a bit of fun and entertainment. I watched it with my dad, and we were both entertained the whole time. We thought it was, a good time. However, it does feel a bit unnecessary in the whole plot of the Karate Kid franchise. I do really love the original 3 films, and while I don't love it, I am a fan of the Jackie Chan Willow Smith, I think it's Willow Smith, I might be wrong there, but whatever, remake. However, this one, trying to combine the 2 universes together and bring it all into one story, it felt like it didn't do either side justice, and it felt like it was written by a committee rather than like the passion of somebody who loves Karate Kid. Coming in at 60, we have a movie that I was actually looking forward to because I'm a big fan of horror and I'm a big fan of clown movies. We have Clown at a Cornfield. This movie is fun and it does have some memorable characters. However, the characters are very one-note, the clown is very one-note, and the story itself is not cohesive at all, and it does not really mesh at all. I feel like I have a lot of the same complaints with these movies near the bottom, but that is why they're at the bottom. They don't feel like complete films, and they don't feel like something I'd ever want to put on again. At number 59, we have, I believe, a Hulu or Amazon Prime Christmas original film, and oh, what fun. This movie had a good cast, and it had some good jokes. However, I am not a fan of Hallmark movies, and this movie felt like a Hallmark movie with a bigger budget, so not really my thing. Coming in at number 58, we have The Strangers Chapter 2. When I heard this trilogy was being announced, I was actually very excited because the original Strangers is one of my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. I absolutely love that film. Then I went in and I watched the first one, and I was very disappointed because it felt like a copy and paste remake of that original film, but like 20 times worse. So I wasn't even going to go see the sequel. I was kind of like pushing this trilogy to the end, kind of trying to get rid of it, stay away from it, but some of my friends wanted to go see a scary movie and they picked this one. So I was like, screw it, let's go give it a chance. And while it was better than Chapter 1, it still was just a almost made for TV quality remake of a great horror franchise, and I just can't get behind it. I'm not a fan of these films. Will I go see Chapter 3? If other people want to see it, sure, but I myself probably will not go buy a ticket to go see that film. At 57, another horror slasher movie, we have Heart Eyes. And while Heart Eyes is the same thing as Chapter 2, it is generic, it is boring, it doesn't really have anything going for it. The only reason I've put it above Strangers Chapter 2, kind of sliced it in a little bit higher, is because it does something new and fresh while being a Valentine's Day slasher film. I enjoy the little scenes we get, like when they're at the drive-in theater and the Heart Eyes killer is trying to get them there. There's a scene, I think, where they're in a bedroom and the Heart Eyes killer comes out of a closet. I could be mistaken for another movie. Like I said, I don't think about these movies quite often, and that's why they're at the bottom. But I do think this one has a little more originality than Strangers Chapter 2. That's why it's one spot higher. At 56, we have a A24 film that I actually respect more than I enjoy, and that is On Becoming a Guinea Fowl. I can see how this might resonate with certain people in certain groups, maybe certain ethnicities, certain cultures, or certain people who have gone through different emotional struggles in their life. However, for me, it didn't really resonate with me on any of those levels, and I don't think I understood what they were trying to do at the end when she was becoming a guinea fowl and she was sounding like a rooster. I don't know what was happening there. If somebody understood that, let me know in the comments. I'm not trying to, crap on this movie at all. I thought it was very original, and I thought it was a interesting idea and a way, to take on trauma. But for me, it just didn't really work. It wasn't my thing. At 55, and I don't actually think this is the 55th best movie of the year. It's probably better than that. But the way it made me feel is why it's so low for me, and that is The Phoenician Scheme. I am a huge fan of Wes Anderson. He's like a top 3 director of all time for me. And when Wes Anderson movies feel like Wes Anderson is starting to fall off, that's just very disappointing to me, and that's what this one felt like. There was no cohesive story. I know Anderson isn't always about his big grand stories. He's really about his set pieces and his designs and, you know, the way the movie feels and gives off energy. I understand that, but to have almost zero story at all, like if you asked me what The Phoenician Scheme was about, I can't tell you, and that is my issue with it. It hurts to see my favorite, or one of my favorite directors fall off. That's why it's at 55. At 54, another generic horror movie, but at least it had a little bit of spice to it and a little bit of character. If you haven't seen it, you've probably seen the pool kill scene that's like all over social media. This is what I'm talking about. That's why it's a little higher than these other crappy horror movies. We have The Monkey. This is a movie by Osgood Perkins, which if you've heard that name before, it's because he made last year's smash hit Longlegs. This movie's definitely not as strong as Longlegs. Honestly, it's a lot weaker, and I don't know if it's because he didn't give himself that much time to work on it. He really truly did finish Longlegs and then star in The Monkey. That's like an 8-month process, and I don't see how a movie can be made in that time, and this really shows here. It's a weak film. I'm still a fan of Osgood Perkins. I really loved his debut in Longlegs, and I'm hoping his third film can bring me back around to this guy. I think he'd be an up-and-coming director in the horror genre. At 53, we have Death of a Unicorn. I actually watched this one recently. I know it came out at the beginning of the year, but it took me a while to get around to it. It's a solid film. It's fine. You know, I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed how it was like E.T. but with unicorns. I thought the kills and the way it attacked the villains of the story was actually very fun. Even the villains, like the family members that were trying to get the unicorn blood, they were a lot of fun to hang out with. I just think overall the movie itself felt empty. Like, the grand plot never really seemed to catch me or finish strong. Like I said, when I was watching it, I was like, wow, I wish I was just watching E.T., which has more character and heart to it. Like I said, it's a fine movie, but it's down here in the 50s because it really doesn't do much to drive it forward for me. At 52, we have Wolfman. This is a Leigh Whannell remake of the classic Universal monsters, and I feel like the other ones that they're doing recently, I mean, I know The Mummy was a complete misfire, but Invisible Man, and then we had Frankenstein also here, which you'll see higher on this list. They've done a better job at taking these original classic Universal stories and making them into something special and new. Whereas Wolfman, while I didn't hate it, I did, enjoy pieces of it. It just felt very generic and bland, and it didn't feel like it needed to happen. When you have the original Wolfman from the Universal Monsters, or you have the Hammer horror stuff, or other versions of this character that are much better done, this just seems like a version of the movie that's going to lose itself to history of time. At 51, we have Fight or Flight, and the reason I checked out this film is because it was described to me as Bullet Train on a plane. Bullet Train was like a top 5 movie for me the year it came out. I loved it. All the action set pieces and the way it was filmed and choreographed was awesome. I thought Brad Pitt was an amazing pick for the lead in that film, and I've actually gone back to Bullet Train like 3 or 4 times since I've watched it. I'm a true huge fan of it. So the tagline got me interested, and sadly, while it is Bullet Train on a plane, it takes every single aspect of Bullet Train and just does it worse. It doesn't, take Bullet Train and make a fun little side adventure of it. It just pastes the movie, but not as much heart, not as much character, and definitely not as memorable or fun of a film. At number 50, we have Captain America: Brave New World. I am a huge fan of Marvel. I've read the comics, I've watched the shows, I've watched the movies, and in fact, I've grown up a fan of Marvel. It's always been one of my favorite things, one of my go-to things when it comes to movies and other subjects. However, I do feel like ever since Endgame, the Marvel MCU has really fallen off, and this is just another example of a movie that comes and goes within the Marvel Universe. I was actually super excited to see a Captain America 4 with the new Cap, with Falcon taking over and being the lead, and seeing where that would go. I knew we were going to get Red Hulk, even though they tried to keep it secret. We knew it was coming, and I thought that was fun, but it was also very short-lived. We got a 10-minute fight scene with Red Hulk that didn't even feel that special. And the movie, like a lot of these movies in this section of my list, is very forgettable. So while I'm skeptical that the MCU is going to make a return to its grand, adventures that we used to get, I'm hoping Doomsday is a stepping point to giving us great Marvel movies again. But as for now, it's been kind of mid. At 49, we have The Surfer. This is a very low-key film, and the only reason I heard about it is because Nick Cage is one of my favorite actors, and if you've watched these videos before, you know, if Nick Cage makes a movie, I will try to go find it. I thought it was a very interesting film. It's very memorable. It has a lot of very interesting, quirky things that go on with it, and that's why it made it into my top 50. I have a lot of fun with the film. However, like a lot of these, it feels empty, and it feels like it was missing something. I think they tried too much to be quirky and weird to the point where they went so far with it, they forgot they actually had to have a compelling story as well, and that's what hurts this film for me. Still though, I find it enjoyable. At 48, I thought I was going to have this higher, but I guess it wasn't much higher. We have Frankenstein. Now, do I think that just movie film-wise, this is a much better made film than Wolfman? I do, and I have it higher because of that. Still though, it's not really my thing. I'm a big fan of the original 1930s Frankenstein, where it's just a short, straight to the point story. Man creates monster. The monster is truly like the unsung hero of the movie. He just wants to be loved and be respected, and people look at him as a creature, as a monster, and it turns out that the true villain is Dr. Frankenstein forever creating this person, and you have all this sympathy for the creature, for the monster, and you want him to make it out. And while this movie does follow that same general storyline, there's also like a backstory to how Dr. Frankenstein becomes who he is. And there's all this build about how he has to like get this money and get this giant castle and become Dr. Frankenstein and finally create the monster. And then the monster has his own like redemption arc, and there's this weird kind of love triangle between the doctor, his brother, his wife, and then like somehow she's into Frankenstein a little bit there. I don't know, that was weird to me. Like I said, I think it was a beautifully shot movie, very well created. It was a work of art on the screen, but I just felt like it stayed for too long. It overdone its welcome, and for me, I don't need all this convoluted, big, broad story for something as simple as Frankenstein. At 47, we have Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. I am a huge fan of music movies. That's why you'll see a lot of my favorites being like School of Rock, Bohemian Rhapsody, and many others. I like seeing, the journey of these musicians' lives. These biopics where we cover these different bands and musicians are very interesting to me. And I think that's where my issues really lie with this film, is that it wasn't a true biopic of Springsteen's life. It was just kind of a cutout of like one area, one time frame of his life when he was creating one album. I think the movie spanned like 6 to 8 months only, and for me that's not what I wanted. I wanted to see the rise of Bruce Springsteen, where he was, who he was, how he became the boss Bruce Springsteen and like turned into stardom. I want to see all of that. That's why I love The Dirt. That's why I loved Bohemian Rhapsody. I like seeing these characters' journeys, and for me this wasn't what I wanted out of a Bruce Springsteen film. At 46, we have the sequel to one of my top 3 films from a few years back, Nobody 2. And while I had a lot of fun with this movie, and I did very much enjoy it, it felt like a huge step back from Nobody 1, where Nobody 1 was very fresh, the action was very fun, and the whole plot line where like his grandpa, who's played by Doc Brown, comes back around to help him. It's a lot of fun, whereas this one, it just kind of feels like a setback, like we're going to a more extravagant place. We have more people looking for Nobody. We have his family members like making like Avengers like cameos and coming in at just the strangest times and saving the day. And I get it. You're trying to go bigger and bolder and better with a sequel. And while I think it was a lot of fun still, and I do enjoy it, I don't need that. I like the simple story, and I like, the simple revenge plot that we got in the original Nobody film. At 45, we have Spinal Tap 2, I think it's called The End Continues. This, again, a fun film. It had me laughing thoroughly the whole time throughout the theater while I was watching it. I had a very fun experience, but at the end, I felt like I wish I just watched the original Spinal Tap. I'm a huge fan of the original, and while this is still a solid film, I'd give it like 6 out of 10. Just, I should point that out, every movie from here on out is like a 6 out of 10. I'm not a harsh critic, man. If you can make me laugh and smile, I'm gonna be a fan of your movie. So, just putting that out there. This was fun, you know, I was laughing the whole time. I liked the little callbacks to the original film. But like other films on this list, it felt a bit convoluted. Did we really need a cameo from like a rock legend every 5 minutes? That wasn't necessary. Did we really need this like comeback tour that led to nothing? The movie felt like it was made more for a cash grab and more for like honoring Spinal Tap one last time than it felt like it was passionately created and it needed to exist. And for me, that's my issue with it. At 44, we have Sketch, which is a brand new like gateway drug horror film from Angel Studios. I think this movie is actually very well made. I think it's a perfect horror movie if your kids want to get into the genre and watch something that won't scare them too much and it's a lot of fun. I really like all the kid characters, and I think it's a very good coming-of-age story, not only for kids going through hard times, but also adults who may be going through hard times, like the father was in this movie. It's very emotional, it tugs at the heartstrings, it's got very cool creature designs. I love that. I want to see like how they came up with these designs and how they create these monsters. I absolutely love that part of it. I just think the reason that it's not in my top half of the list for me is this movie wasn't made for me. This movie was made for, you know, either adults who are struggling with divorce or the loss of a loved one, or for kids who, you know, are just full of imagination and fun and want to see something that's different for them. And I don't know, the humor was very child-friendly. I didn't really laugh at it, where I feel like my niece, who's 5 years old, would have loved the humor. So while I can respect the hell out of this movie, and I think it's a great gateway drug horror film for young kids, for me, it's just not my bag. It's not my cup of tea, and I think that's why it's so low here on my list. At 43, we have Black Phone 2. I actually was not going to watch this film because, blasphemy, I'm not a big fan of the original Black Phone. I thought it was a bit overbearing. I didn't think it was the best concept for a horror movie, and I felt like it didn't always hit the spot where like the Black Phone was like the kids trying to talk to him to save him, and I don't know, it just felt over the top for me. I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but then I heard that this one was taking a twist where the grabber was now becoming a Freddy Krueger type character, and I thought, that's actually a pretty interesting way to take this series. Let's see how this works out. And to my surprise, I actually enjoyed this one quite a bit more than the original Black Phone. I don't know if they can go into a Black Phone 3 with the way this one ended, but if they did, I would be excited to see how it goes. But still, it's not my favorite concept for a horror movie. I've never been a huge fan of this Black Phone series, and I don't think that's really going to change for me. But this one was an upgrade from that first one. At 42, we have a Minecraft movie. I was excited to see this one because I'm a huge fan of Minecraft. I love the game. I played it when I was younger, and I still play it here and then now today. My friends play it. We all went to go see it together. I saw it with my girlfriend. We had a lot of fun. Everybody laughed. Everybody thought that it was entertaining. However, it was a Minecraft movie. I mean, you're not getting Pulp Fiction here. You're not getting Shawshank Redemption. You're getting a Minecraft movie. It was stupid, it was silly, but it had Jack Black and it was a lot of fun. That's why it's coming over here in like the middle of my list. At 41, we have Companion. This movie kind of felt like a bunch of modern day horror movies we've been getting lately, mixed all together into one bag, shake it up, and throw out a script. It was a lot of fun, but it felt like 10 different things that I've seen before. And for me, I need originality in my movies. I need something to stick to that's gonna catch me and like be memorable. And sitting here right now, I don't remember much of Companion besides the fact that it was fun, but it felt like a rehashed version of everything else I've seen. At 40, we have Jurassic World Rebirth. I feel like this movie might have been higher because I was actually really enjoying it. However, and I know this shouldn't count against my viewing experience, but the theater actually, like, all the lights shut off with like 30 minutes left in the movie, and then they came back on with 10 minutes left, and I missed like a whole 20-minute span. I ended up finding like that, like, I don't know, random Twitter page, and I watched it at 20 minutes, and it was very low quality, but I got to see what I missed, and sadly it was like the huge dinosaur fight at the end, so it was like the culmination of everything. But anyways, besides the point, I think this is my favorite movie in the Jurassic Park franchise since the original Jurassic World. I think it was a lot of fun. I think it had good characters. However, we're just never going to get back to those days of Jurassic Park 2, and Jurassic World. I think while I love this franchise, it may be time to call it quits and just, stop the bleeding and leave us with the masterpieces we have. At 39, we have Ballerina. This is a movie that takes place in the world of John Wick, starring Ana de Armas, and she is one of the ballerina-like hitmen that we heard about throughout the John Wick movies. I love the action scenes in it. It was very John Wick-esque, but it was honestly my least favorite film in the franchise. If I'm comparing this movie to the other 4 John Wick films, it doesn't compare. And I wasn't expecting that. It is a spin-off, and typically spin-offs aren't going to be like the originals. They're not going to live up to them. But I do think it's a fun little side story within this universe, and I wouldn't mind watching it again if it was on TV, throwing on the background. But like I said, if you're expecting John Wick, it's not quite that. At 38, we have 28 Years Later. In all honesty, being a huge zombie fan and probably being my favorite subgenre of horror movies is zombie, I shockingly don't love the 28 Days Later movie or the whole franchise. I think they're a bit too, drag and dark, and I don't know, I like more fun in my films. And while this movie definitely kept the series going, it kept me entertained, and I am excited to see what happens in Bone Temple and then whatever they call the third movie. I don't know, I wasn't that pleased with it. I had a good time in the theaters, but then I kind of never thought about it again. That's how I feel about all these 28 days, weeks, years later films. They're good films, I'm entertained, but it's nothing that I, crawl back home to. At 37, one of the more entertaining films of the year, but still a little bit on the weaker end when it comes to story and characters and plot, we have Drop. This movie reminded me of another movie I saw this year in the same horror genre because they both have scenes in these high-rise restaurants. Drop was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the characters, but here we are sitting here talking about it, and it's kind of forgettable. Like I've been saying about a lot of these films in this middle section. I didn't hate them, I didn't love them, I thought they were good, and I never thought about them ever again, and that's why Drop comes in here at 37. At 36, a movie I think kind of brought this franchise back to its roots and fixed a lot of my issues I had with the last film, is The Conjuring: Last Rites. I think The Conjuring 1 or 2 are modern day horror masterpieces, and then Conjuring 3 was just like a bad film in my opinion. One of the worst movies in the entire Conjuring franchise. I could not get behind it. I thought it was truly a really rough movie to sit through. So when Last Rites was announced, I was a bit skeptical, feeling like this Conjuring universe should come to a close. But I do feel like while this isn't the best movie I've seen, it is a satisfying close to this franchise, which I hope it's a close, but they're probably going to make like a Nun 4 or some crap that we have to watch. But I do think that it was a satisfying closure for a lot of its characters. I like how they went back to the family and we actually got to sit with the characters that we've known about and we've cared for, and how the demons were back at attacking this family that we know. It was like half the cast was missing from 3 and it didn't really do it for me. I'm glad this movie found its roots and stuck with them. At 35, we have the brand new live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. While I definitely still prefer the animated version, and I'm sure everyone else out there in the world does as well, I do think this movie had a lot of heart in it, and it followed the original film almost to a T, and the changes that it made weren't like detrimental changes that I hated. It changed the bodyguard, spy guy, Bubbles, changed his character around a little bit, and it also made some villains heroes and some heroes villains that you wouldn't have expected if you know the original cartoon. And while some people might have hated these changes, I didn't find them to be that upsetting. I enjoyed the film, I had fun watching it, I laughed quite a bit. It, was a very emotional film, as the original is, with Ohana talking about family, the sacrifices people have to make. I think it's a good family film and you should check it out. But like I said, it is a live action remake of something we've seen before, so it can't go that much higher on my list. At 34, a modern day horror franchise that I am a big fan of, we have Megan 2.0. I thought the original film was a lot of fun. It was like a mixture of Terminator and Chucky. And here, it's kind of like that, but Terminator 2, where Megan becomes the Terminator and becomes kind of a hero and helps us out here at the end of the film. If we get a Megan 3, I will check it out. I am a fan of these films. They are a lot of fun. You know, it's never going to be the greatest film you see. It's never going to be like a top 10, top 20 movie of the year, but they are fun and they are, you know, just background popcorn entertainment to throw on and watch. At 33, I have Fear Street Prom Queen, and while I'm going through these films, I'm looking at like the overall Letterboxd rankings of what you guys, the other audience members, gave these films, and this is probably my hottest take because it looks like this belongs at like my bottom spot. I don't see why. I think it's fun. I think it's entertaining. I'm a big fan of these Fear Street films. Like I said with Megan, it's not going to be the best film you saw. It won't even be a top 20 film you saw. But it kept me entertained and it kept me going. And for me, that's what I need. I don't know. I'm not a critic when it comes to movies. I'm not looking for like beautiful set pieces and, you know, grand stories and these great adventures like Frankenstein was this year. I just want something simple. Something that'll make me laugh, make me smile, make me happy, and entertain me the whole way through. I'm a very simple person. I'm not a like classic movie critic that you'll see, but I don't know, I feel like that's refreshing. Maybe it's a different take, and I actually enjoyed this Fear Street film. At 32, we have Zootopia 2. I went and saw this one a couple weeks back with my niece. She was dying to see it. She loves the original film. So I actually watched the original like 3 days before I saw this one. And I'm a big fan of that original now too. It has a lot of heart and it's a very good, like modern, I would say, gonna be a classic animated child film. For Zootopia 2, it also had a lot of heart. It also had good jokes. I once again liked how they utilized the different animals and like how they would act if they were like humans or, you know, existed in society. I think those jokes are a lot of fun and I like how they hit on those different aspects. But for me, it was definitely a weaker film than the original Zootopia. If the original Zootopia came out this year, it's probably a top 15 film for me. This one, still a lot of fun, still in my second, you know, top half of the list, but just not the same vibe and the same, energy that the original game gave off. It doesn't really live up to it, I don't think. At 31, we have the new Marvel movie Thunderbolts. And like I said, huge fan of the MCU, huge fan of Marvel. I know a lot of people love Thunderbolts and will probably put it in like their top 10 of the year. But for me, it also felt a bit empty. It felt a bit cut and paste. I did like how it was like a different type of film. It felt like Marvel's Suicide Squad, and it actually, you know, was very emotional, and it did resonate with me on that level. However, the ending resonating with me and being emotional and something I can latch onto doesn't make up for the first 2/3 of the film, just feeling very generic and cut and paste. And I think that's what the MCU has really became for me, is generic, which is sad because it used to be my favorite franchise in the world. I'm hoping we can get back to these new, original, fresh ideas, but so far I'm not seeing it. Still though, a solid movie and coming in at 31. Alright, coming into the top 30, and I would say everything from here on up, it's like a 7.5 out of 10 or higher. And here at 30, we have Borderline. This movie was a ton of fun. It's something I definitely want to go back to and rewatch because I watched it so long at the beginning of the year that I've kind of forgot quite a bit of it. But even now, I gave it like a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd in the beginning of the year. And I just remember enjoying it so much. I really enjoy the main actress. I think she might be the scream queen of our generation. The whole cast was a lot of fun, and it's definitely a film that I want to possibly own and get back around to, just so I can remember what it was that I love so much about it. At 29, we have A Working Man. I'm usually not a big fan of these Jason Statham, like, early year action films. They're usually just come and go, you know, feel like they're written by committee. We get like 2 a year and that's about it. But this one was actually quite a bit of fun. I really enjoyed his character in this, and I thought the action scenes were very well played out. As far as action movies go, man, all I really need is like great action scenes and a fun character to get behind. I don't need the best movie ever. I just need those two things, and I can sit back, watch, and enjoy myself. At 28, we have probably the most fun film of the year, in all honesty, and that is Freaky Tales. This movie takes like 4 different stories from the 80s, which anything from like 70s, 80s, 90s time frame. I love watching stuff that has that vibe to it, but it takes these 4 different stories from the 80s and kind of like mashes them all together, these different freaky tales, and it all kind of comes together at the end, and it feels kind of like an anthology film, but it's not necessarily one. If you haven't checked this one out because it's very under the radar, I say that you should go do it. It is a lot of fun. At 27, another A24 film, and we have Warfare. A very bleak and dark film, but it's very real. The whole movie takes place in like this one building where the army men are stationed and where they are kind of not held captive, but they can't really leave from there because there's enemies all around. And the whole time they're just trying to get home and get safe. The stakes are very high, the tension's very high. There is, some characters that feel very like one note or like cliche characters. They kind of fit a stereotype, but then you find out that these are like real people and that's actually how they were. So that's kind of interesting. It was based off a real story. It has a lot of high stakes, a lot of high tension, and it is something that I think everyone should watch. It really shows you the true horrors of war and why, it's not good out there, and war is bad, and I know it's a very generic thing to say, but it really makes you feel that while watching it. At 26, we have Eddington. This is the newest film from Ari Aster, and I actually enjoyed a lot of stuff about this one. I enjoyed a lot more than I didn't enjoy, and I think that's why it's so high up on my list, but the reason it's not quite cracking my top 20 is one of the major plot points of this film was COVID, and even still in 2025, I'm just so sick of hearing about COVID. So for me, a movie that's kind of centered around it is kind of a struggle to get through. So it had a lot of good aspects to it, but a lot of stuff that I kind of wish it just left on the drawing board and didn't include. At 25, we have The Accountant 2. This is a very good sequel to what I think is one of the best action films of the past, 15, 20 years. The original Accountant is a great movie. I love how he is so different of an action hero because he has these little tics and things about him. He's autistic and he's very good at math. That's why he's an accountant. And he takes that autism, instead of something that stops him from being an action hero, it really kind of elevates him and his skills. And I enjoyed this one, how it was more of a team up with him and his brother. And we've got to see, the different aspects of his life. And we got to really dive more into the character. However, in terms of action and story and plot, I do still prefer the original. But then again, it's in my top 25. It is a good movie for this year. At 24, another A24 horror movie, and we have Bring Her Back. A very dark and twisted horror movie that has twists and turns and just very bleak characters. While it is a very good film, it is one that is hard to get through and hard to watch. There are a lot of scenes that can make you wince or want to turn away, and I don't know, like I said, I love horror films, but I love when my horror films are fun, and this movie, while being a great film, it's not fun at all. At 23, the same kind of vibe here, another horror film, but this one is a body horror movie, and we have Together. I really do like the body horror genre if it's done right and it's not overdoing it. The Fly is a fun movie, but then you get some movies that are Crimes of the Future, and it's I hate that movie, it's too much. And I think this one perfectly lands right in the middle of those. It's not overdoing it. It has a good, story to tell with the relationship between the male and the female character, and the other side characters are also very fun. I think the story wraps up well. The only thing that's keeping it outside of my top 20 is it just doesn't perfectly hit every point I wanted it to. It's a lot of fun. It's a good watch. It does body horror very well, but it just doesn't hit every point perfectly. At 22, we have Magazine Dreams. This movie wasn't supposed to come out this year. I think it was supposed to come out 2023 or a few years back, but with the whole scandal surrounding Jonathan Majors, it got postponed. But I am glad that we finally got to see this film. It is a very good movie. It is a take on how men are in physical sports or different aspects of life, striving for perfection, how it can really take a toll on you. And it can lead you, to depression, anxiety, and flat-out craziness. I think that it's a really good character study on the main character, Jonathan Majors. I know he's going through scandals and everything in his career, but I think he has a exceptional performance here, and I think if this movie came out the year it was supposed to, he probably would have been up for an Oscar for Best Performance. It's a very good film. It really takes on struggles, but like I said, I like fun movies, and this movie is a bit dark and a bit, hard to get through, and that's why it can't quite crack my top 20. I feel like I sound like a broken record, but these are great movies that I just don't have fun watching. At 21, a movie I do have fun watching and I think is really good, we have Good Fortune. This is the movie where Keanu Reeves plays an angel who is kind of low on the ranking of angels, and he's just helping people from texting and driving and getting into accidents. He tries to outstep his boundary, and he causes this massive shift where this Uber driver switches lives with this tech bro millionaire. And you can see how he's trying to show him that being rich doesn't solve everything, but then it solves a lot of his problems, and the comedy here is just top notch. I had a lot of fun watching it. I was laughing the whole way through. So was my cousin, my friend who I went to go see it with. Keanu Reeves does a really good job with that deadpan, straight humor, and I think this movie is a good one to go out and see if you haven't yet. If you're just looking for a heartfelt comedy that you haven't seen that's newer to you. Here we are, my top 20, and the first movie on this list is Until Dawn. This is another movie that seems to have pretty low reviews, and I don't know if it's because people who played the game don't appreciate it. I've never played the game, so for me, I don't have anything holding me back. I think the movie is a lot of fun. I would like to see, possibly more films in this universe. I think it's really cool concept what they do with it. The characters are a lot of fun. The villain is a lot of fun. And overall, this movie just really hits the spot for me. This is what I'm talking about when I say fun horror. Is it the best horror movie of the year? No, I get it, and I can see why there's low ratings, but it is one of the most fun ones, and for me, that's all you really need to do is keep me entertained. At 19, my favorite of the 3 new Marvel movies we got this year, I have Fantastic Four: First Steps. I've been a Fantastic Four for my whole life. When I was in 2nd grade, I had a Fantastic Four backpack that I brought to school every day. Like I said, Marvel's a big part of my life and who I am. And sadly, we got 2 Fantastic Four movies when I was young that I actually loved back then because I was a little kid, but I can understand are not great. And then we got the abysmal 2015 one that is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. So to finally get a honest to God, good Fantastic Four film, now someone that actually does the family justice and shows them as a true family and what they have to go through and their everyday struggles, I really enjoyed it. Was it the best thing ever? No, I probably feel like we could still get a better Fantastic Four film. Of the 4 that we've gotten, this is, I think, the best one, the highest quality one, and for me, that'll throw up my top 20 because I'm such a huge fan of this set of characters. At 18, an absolute shock for me that this made it this high because I'm a huge fan of this franchise, but never would I think that one of its films would be my top 20. We have Final Destination Bloodlines, which I think is the best Final Destination movie since the original and might be my favorite to date. I'm a big fan of this franchise. Like I said, there's no bad films. I know 4 is the, stepchild of this franchise and no one really likes it. I still think 4 is fun, but by far this is the best movie in the franchise that we've gotten in a long time. Final Destination Bloodlines takes the stakes up to another level. It gives you really good characters, and I like how it kind of takes the whole franchise and puts it all together, loops it all together, shows how, if you cheat death and it's in your bloodline, it can still come back and haunt you and you have to cut off the bloodline. It's a really cool concept and might be my favorite movie of the whole franchise. At 17, a movie I was very worried about, we have Wicked for Good. I've been seeing things in the news and in the media and in the press that this movie is not, great, that if you like the first one, you still might not like this one. It goes too far with things. And honestly, when I went to see it, I tried to push all that noise out and just watch the film for what it was. And I had a pretty good time with it. I think it hits the emotional depths very well between the Wicked Witch and the Good Witch played by Ariana Grande. I think all the characters are shown pretty well. I do like how we get origin stories almost to what we get in Wizard of Oz with the Tin Man, the Lion, the Scarecrow, and even a little bit of Dorothy, even though we never really see her. We just kind of see her from the back walking around and doing things. I do enjoy that. And I like how now, after watching this movie, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to go back and rewatch the Wizard of Oz and view the movie through a new lens where the Wicked Witch wasn't actually wicked. She was just mistreated and, you know, almost like wronged by the media that was ran by the wizard. And I'm going to be able to watch it now through that lens and kind of follow it as like a hero and an anti-hero trying to get to the wizard and see what happens from there. I think it's going to be fun to watch it that way. At 16, we have Wake Up Dead Man, which is technically Knives Out 3. I'm a big fan of this franchise. I think this one was a definite improvement over Glass Onion, but still not quite as good as Knives Out. Knives Out would be like my #1 movie every single year. I love that one so much. But Wake Up Dead Man did bring this franchise back up to like that glory that Knives Out had it at. I'm not saying Glass Onion was a bad film, but still a definite improvement here. I like the cast of characters. I love Benoit Blanc. I hope we get like 20 more films with this dude just running around solving murders and mysteries. Huge fan of it. I'm hoping Knives Out 4 gets made soon. I'm hearing that Rian Johnson, I believe is the director's name. Yep, Rian Johnson may be taking a break to explore other projects, and I totally understand that, but I really do love this franchise, and like I said, I could watch 12 more stories about Benoit Blanc just solving mysteries. At 15, we have Superman, my favorite superhero movie of the year, and that goes as no surprise to me because I love James Gunn films, and James Gunn delivers once again. While I don't think this is quite on the level of the Guardians films or the Suicide Squad, I do think that it's a very well-made Superman movie, and I definitely enjoy it over the past DCEU outs like Batman and Man of Steel. This is definitely my favorite thing to come out of the DCU in a long time. And I'm excited to see where they take this character and where they take this new rebooted universe with James Gunn at the helm. If this is any sign, I think we're in for a treat, and this might overtake the MCU for me in the near future, but Marvel's still #1 for me. At 14, another very low-key movie that probably won't be this high on everyone else's list, but we have Nonnas. This is a movie where Vince Vaughn opens up an Italian restaurant and only hires Italian Nonnas to come in and cook the meals and provide the food for everybody. And I just think it's very heartfelt, very emotional, it tugs at the heartstrings, and it can really, resonate with people, especially me who grew up in an all-Italian family. I had a Nonna who cooked for us every Sunday. And I just got to see that on the screen, and I can understand why some people would be thinking to me like, Jacob, how is this in your top 15? I don't understand that, and I totally get it, but as someone who grew up Italian and grew up with a Nonna and just saw this stuff firsthand, it truly meant a lot to me, and I really enjoyed this film. At 13, the newest film from Darren Aronofsky, we have Caught Stealing, and this movie is a bit of a detour for Darren Aronofsky. I do like Requiem for a Dream, I do like The Whale, but those movies are more like dark and, very secluded and toned down, whereas Caught Stealing is almost an action film at times. It's very fast-paced, it keeps going, and it really felt more like Coen Brothers-esque than it did Darren Aronofsky. However, I do love Caught Stealing. I think it's a good time. It's not quite in my top 10 because it's not what I expect from Darren Aronofsky. I don't know if that threw me off at all, but I don't have to stick up for anything I'm saying right now. It's at number 12. I did enjoy the film, so Caught Stealing, this is where it's at. At number 12, we have the brand new Edgar Wright film, another one of my top 5 favorite directors, The Running Man. And this movie is a ton of fun, man. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, having a blast. I think that they had the perfect lead here. I mean, no one's going to replace Arnold, but I think he did a hell of a job. And while I've never seen the original Running Man, I do want to get around to watching it because I've heard great things. I do really love this film. I am curious to see which one I'm going to enjoy more. I hope I don't have recency bias or anything, or I just have, or I don't have nostalgia for the original, so I'm not going to see what other people see, but we'll see. I think Edgar Wright did a great job with this one. Edgar Wright's still top of his game. I don't see that guy falling off anytime soon. I'm super pumped for what he comes out with. At number 11, we have F1. I was honestly shocked to see this one did not make my top 10 when I was putting this list together. When I first saw it this year, I thought for sure it would have. Brad Pitt, again, doing an amazing job in this film. And I really feel like this is where Brad Pitt is going to take a turn in his career and become like that seasoned actor who has a resurgence. We are seeing this with like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and other films lately. This guy is going to have like that resurgence and be like our new, seasoned actor who we love, like De Niro or Sam Jackson, one of those guys. Truly excited to see what comes next in Brad Pitt's career. If you like racing, you should like this film. If you like, an underdog story, you will like this film. It's got a great one. Overall, I really have no complaints with F1. It's in my number 11 spot. At number 10, a movie I was worried for but also excited for. We have Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another. Leo DiCaprio again showing why he's the best actor in the entire world. A great performance here and a great movie all around. The reason I was worried for this film was because I was not a fan of Licorice Pizza and I thought maybe PTA was reaching like the end of his top of his career, but he came back with this one, and it's in my top 10. So, One Battle After Another, definitely a great movie. Definitely going to be up for like an Oscar nom. I can't see why it wouldn't be. And it's probably one that you've all checked out. Probably one that you've all enjoyed if you're watching this movie. I got no complaints for it. One Battle After Another coming in at my top 10. At number 9, what might be the most talked about movie of the first half of this year, we have Sinners. A very, very cool concept for a movie. You have this film that almost feels like two different parts, two different films that come together very well, where the first half follows these two brothers, Smoke and Stack, who are trying to like return home and, start their life anew. They have this bar they're opening up that they're going to, it's in the olden times. It's back when, race issues were still very prevalent and a very big deal in our country, so they were opening like this all-black bar. And then the movie takes a total twist, and it ends up being a vampire film, and you get crazy action set pieces with these vampires. And this is where I think the movie really took it up a notch for me and why I fell in love with it. I know this is probably like everyone's number 1 or number 2 film, and it definitely deserves that. It's at my number 9. Sinners is a great movie, and I can't wait to go and rewatch it. At number 8, another horror movie that had everyone talking, and I liked just a little bit more than Sinners. We have Weapons. Probably my most anticipated movie of the year. After I saw that trailer, I was freaking out. I thought it was going to be exceptional. And it was made by Zach Cregger, the same guy who made Barbarian. So this guy's off to a great start in his career. 2 absolutely phenomenal horror movies. And Weapons, I think, is going to be talked about as a solidified classic in like the next 10 years. It's very creepy. It has almost like a Stranger Things vibe, which, if you can see by my shirt, huge fan of that show. I really love how, no one really knows what happens to these kids, and everyone's trying to figure it out, and they're pointing fingers and blame at everyone besides like the person who actually did it. And I enjoy how every part of this movie follows a different character. Like part 1 is named after a character, part 2 a different character, and you get to see all these different views of how this story is coming together to all lead to a very satisfying conclusion where when you finally see how evil is defeated, you can't help but grin at it. At number 7, a huge shock for me and a huge shock for a lot of you out there too. When my girlfriend asked me to go see this movie, I thought the trailer looked entertaining, but, I thought it was going to be a chick flick and it wasn't going to be my thing, but I was completely wrong about that. It's actually a top-notch thriller, almost in the vein of like 1 Hour Photo or Hide and Seek or like The Gift. If you've seen those movies, kind of has that same vibe. I'm talking about The Housemaid. A book that was written that all like these girls that I knew, my girl cousins, and they all read it. I thought it was a chick flick. I thought it was not on my alley. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised. This film takes a lot of twists and turns, and it has you on the edge of your seat the whole time, and almost was like a perfect film for me this year, besides a few things that I really couldn't get behind, mainly in the end of the film. But it makes my top 10. It's over here at number 7. I really do love The Housemaid, and I'm shocked at how high it ended up on my list. At 6, we have The Life of Chuck, probably the most emotionally demanding movie of the year. Very much, it had a lot of scenes that can make you cry, make you think about your own life. And it's one of those films that after you watch it, you turn it off or you let the credits run and you just sit back. And if you're watching it by yourself, you just think about your life and things going on and, how your life is playing out and where it could play out. Or if you're watching with somebody else, you have these life discussions. And it's truly a movie that makes you think and a movie that makes you feel, with an ending that is both heartbreaking and, redeeming at the same time. This is one of the best films of the year. I don't know if it's going to be up for an Oscar nomination, but it's one that I definitely think should be. Here we are, breaking into my top 5, and at number 5 we have Roofman. Not quite as emotionally demanding as Life of Chuck, or as crazy and rambunctious as like a Sinners or a Weapons, but just a movie that I think does everything right. I love the story, I love the characters. This movie never takes a dull moment. For me, one of the biggest things to, be high on my end of the year list is you have to not have dull points in your movie. You have to be continuously going on a good path. You have to have great pacing. And for me, this might be the most well-paced movie of the year. It goes from story to action to setup to deliverance, and you are never once feeling like you wish something happened differently, or like you want to, pause it and go to the bathroom or go get a snack or go get a drink. You are on the edge of your seat the whole time, waiting to see what's next. And while I agree, it's probably not the best made film of the year, or something that's gonna, shock you, or, have a great twist ending, or anything that's deep, but The Roofman is perfectly paced and a lot of fun, and it cracks my top 5. At number 4, an action movie that, if you've heard me talk about the kind of action movies I like, John Wick and Nobody, you'll know why it's here. We have Novocaine. This is like one of the first 3 movies I watched of the year, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. Every time someone says, recommend me a new movie, this is one of the ones I recommend. It's got some of the best action set pieces I've seen all year, some of the best stunts, some of the best choreography and camera work. And I just love how it feels so fresh and new. That's why I loved Nobody. That's why I love Bullet Train, John Wick 4. Fresh, new action movies. Action is a genre that's been so overdone, and 9 times out of 10 it feels generic and like something you've seen before, rehash, or directed by a committee, and it doesn't need to be here. But Novocaine felt fresh, it felt new, it was well acted, well directed, and honestly one of the best action films I've seen in the last 5 years. Before I give you my top 3, I'm going to give you a little fun honorable mention, because while I saw it in theaters this year, it's technically not a 2025 film, so I didn't want to include it on my list, but it'd probably end up right in this spot anyway. And we have Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. Quentin Tarantino is my favorite director of all time. Pulp Fiction, Django, Reservoir Dogs, Bastards, all top 20 films for me. And while Kill Bill has always been one of the weakest, I still have always enjoyed it. But that has all changed after watching The Whole Bloody Affair. It went from being, in my opinion, the weakest Tarantino film to one of the strongest. This is the way Tarantino always intended it to be watched, always intended it to be made. And my advice to you is, if you can ever go watch The Whole Bloody Affair in theaters, go do it. It seems to be getting re-releases every once in a while. So if you ever see it out there, go watch it. Watch this version. It is the best way to watch this film. Alright, finally we are here. My mouth is dry. I am getting sick of talking. I feel like I've been talking for 3 hours. It probably hasn't been that long, but it feels like it. But we are at the top 3, and I'm excited to bring to you my 3 favorite films of the year. When I was making this list, I happily found that I knew exactly what my top 3 were going to be, and it didn't change the whole time making it. So here we are. At number 3, we have Friendship. If I could describe this movie to anybody, it's take I Love You Man, that really good comedy made 15 years ago, flip it on its head and make it just uncomfortable as hell to watch. The whole time I watched this movie, I was cringing. I was trying not to laugh, but I was laughing, and I don't even know if I was laughing at jokes or laughing at just how awkward the characters are in this film. Every little thing that the main character does, I just wince and freak out about. And he's so creepy and weird. The performance is so good. It has to be my favorite performance of the year. I know it's not going to win Best Actor because it's not an Oscar bait performance, but man, it's so good. It really should win. Overall, just a great movie. It's creepy, it's fun, it's entertaining, it's got great performances, and if you haven't watched Friendship, I highly recommend you go and watch it. It's my number 3 film for the year. At number 2, probably the most emotionally full and fulfilling film of the year, we have The Ballad of Wallace Island. This movie truly hits all marks and points that it's going for. It's a near perfect script, and all the characters really give their best performances. I think that this movie might have been the one that really sat with me the longest because of its emotional story and just the way that you feel for these characters. They're all going on their own separate journeys, but their journeys all mean so much to one another, and they all find what they truly need in the end. And I think that's what's so special about it, is it's all these broken characters coming together when they don't really want each other, but they truly need each other, and finding ways to, make everyone's life better and make everyone find what they're looking for in life. It's truly a beautiful story, and I think that it's deserving of my number 2 spot this year. And number 1 on my list, a huge shock for me. I don't know how this ended up being number 1, but it's probably the movie I thought about the most. It's probably the movie that was the most well-paced, and like I said, that matters a lot for me. I don't think it's better than the last few films, but like I said, this is not about the best film or the highest rated film. This is about the film that I enjoyed the most, the one that I had the most fun with, and that is The Long Walk. This is a Stephen King adaptation of one of his books from, I believe I read it was written like the 90s, but I could be wrong. And this is just a very great adaptation of this story. All the characters are picked very well. It's a very, a non-stop action-packed ride. I know there's not action, they're just walking 4 miles an hour down a street, but it's really got you on the edge of your seat the whole time. It's got so much tension, it's got so much heart. As these kids walk, you just hear all their stories and you learn to grow with them. There's bullies who you learn to love. There's, freaks and nerds who you learn to love, and all these people are all here for different reasons, and you're just pushing and praying that they all can go as far as they can. When these characters genuinely do fall and are taken out one at a time in this film, it's demoralizing and it hurts every single time. It's not something you enjoy watching when they're taken out, but it's also something that is necessary to move the plot forward. And I don't know, I feel like I don't have much more to say besides that this is my favorite film of the year. I'd probably give it like a 9 out of 10. I liked it that much. I don't know if there's any 10 out of 10 movies for me this year, but The Long Walk is definitely the closest to it. I understand if it's not in your top 10 or in your top 20 and you think I'm crazy for putting it at number 1, but it's genuinely so well paced and it delivers on everything it's trying to do. And that ending blow, it's just so heartbreaking, but it also makes so much sense for what's happening in this film. I really think it is a great Stephen King adaptation. I'm a big fan of Stephen King books and movies, and I think this is another one to add to like the classic Stephen King stories for me. Alright everyone, thank you all so much for watching my video. This took a long time to do, so if you could please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me your top 10 favorite, your top 10 least favorite, your favorite movie of the year. I don't care, whatever you want to do, throw in the comments, please. I spent hours watching these movies, days watching these movies, and hours putting this list together and thinking about what to say for each and every film. This is always my hardest video to make every year, but it's also my most rewarding for me. So, like I said, thank you so much. I really hope you stuck around to the end and saw what my favorite film was. Please leave a comment, please subscribe. Happy New Year to all of you, and have a great day, and have a great 2026. Thank you all, and I'll see you in the next video.